Tonight, a Saskatoon private school connected to abuse allegations is shut down by the province. Also, the province's registered nurses union says understaffing and overcrowding at a Saskatoon hospital have hit a crisis point. Plus, we take you to Wascana Park in Regina, where arborists from across the prairies are honing their skills.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Friday, August 26th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Thanks for joining us. Sam is away tonight. Less than 2 weeks ago, we told you about a Saskatoon private school that had its building lease terminated. That was in connection to widespread abuse allegations outlined in a CBC News investigation. Now we're learning that school has been shut down. Jesse Anton has the details.
Grace Christian School no longer has approval from the Saskatchewan government to operate. It's one of 3 schools tied to abuse allegations stemming from a CBC News investigation. The Ministry of Education appointed special administrators to take over the schools with staff connected to those allegations. That includes the director of Grace Christian. But when that administrator started working at the school on Wednesday, the ministry says the director refused to cooperate, so the school's registration certificate was cancelled. CBC Radio-Canada has reached out to the director for comment, but have not received a response. In a statement, the ministry says pulling the certification was in the public interest since the director is a defendant in a current proposed class action lawsuit. Caitlin Erickson is among the dozens of former students listed as plaintiffs who have come forward in recent weeks with stories of abuse during their time at what's now known as Legacy Christian Academy. With the current director of Grace Christian having taught her years ago, she welcomes this move from the government.
It happened a lot later than it should have, but it's a start.
Erickson's former classmate, Stephanie Hutchinson, agrees. She says the next step is for the province to take a closer look at all private schools.
There could be other people. There are other people named in the suit. Who knows where they are? They're not certified with the SBTRB. They're not regulated. So the Ministry of Education needs to do something to pay attention to how these schools are started, how they get these letters of eligibility, or how they're enforcing their regulations to make sure kids are safe.
The Saskatchewan Professional Teachers Regulatory Board, or the SPTRB, says its Professional Conduct Committee has ordered an investigation but is waiting for police to wrap up theirs. The 3 teachers involved in the suit who hold teaching certificates also signed agreements with the Regulatory Board last week. They promise not to teach or do any kind of related activities until that committee looks into the abuse allegations. All but 3 defendants have been served in this lawsuit, and once they are, and a judge has been appointed, the plaintiffs are hoping to certify the class action, but that's estimated to be 3 to 4 months down the road. Jesse Anton, CBC News, Regina.
The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations is calling for Dawn Walker to be released from custody. Walker is accused of staging her own death and her son's and fleeing to the U.S. illegally. Yasmin Khanea brings us the latest.
We are calling on for the release of Dawn Walker on her own recognizance.
Several Indigenous women spoke in support of Dawn Walker today. As of late this afternoon, the Saskatoon woman is back in local police custody. Walker will make her first provincial court appearance Monday morning. The force saying again today that additional charges are still being considered.
Dawn is not going anywhere. She will be home with her family and close to her son.
Walker and her 7-year-old were found in Oregon earlier this month after being the focus of an extensive missing persons search that started on July 22nd. Police say Walker faked her and her son's deaths before illegally entering the U.S.
On behalf of our family, I also wanted to thank all the people and organizations that have supported our family and Dawn throughout this long ordeal.
One notable person who was not at today's news conference is 3rd Vice Chief Ali Bear. Earlier this month, Bear released a statement personally apologizing for the, quote, difference in treatment and attention that was given to Walker's case. I am here to personally apologize to all the families who felt disheartened or that they had less support than the situation at hand. Walker faces abduction and public mischief charges here at home and more charges across the border. She says she fled because she feared for her safety and that of her son. The FSIN says she was a victim of domestic violence. So far, police say they have found no proof of that. Yasmin Ghanaya, CBC News, Saskatoon.
We've heard many stories about how hospitals are crowded and understaffed in this province, but on Wednesday night at Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon, some say it was the worst night in history. Pratush Dayal has the details.
Wednesday night was a tough one for staff and patients at Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon. According to the Saskatchewan Union of Nurses, more than 90 people were waiting in the emergency room with only 31 beds available. And 9 ambulances were held up in the wait, some paramedics having to treat patients in those vehicles.
Just being expected to give more and more.
SUN President Tracy Zambury points out that Saskatoon only has 15 ambulances for the whole city. She says she spoke with the nurses who worked that night.
And it is the worst they've ever seen it in their entire careers. To be 200+% over capacity is beyond what we could ever imagine. It is a tragedy in waiting. It is the stress on the registered nurses that are working in that emergency room department there isn't even words to describe it anymore.
Zambury says many RNs are burnt out and some are experiencing anxiety and panic attacks. And she is worried about what is yet to come. With students and teachers going back to school and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Zambury says we are watching the collapse of emergency rooms. And she says it's not just the Saskatoon's hospitals.
I spoke with one registered nurse who works at the Regina General Hospital in emergency. And she talked about it being so full. There were 50 people in the lineup to get to the tertiary desk. Their waiting room was completely full. People were able to get down. They were being housed down the hallway.
SUN says another hospital in Regina was down by over 50% in nurse staffing today, with the ER full. The Ministry of Health says they are aware of emergency departments struggling with staff shortages and tertiary acute care sites, especially in Saskatoon, experiencing overcapacity. They say they are working towards recruiting and retaining healthcare workers.
But we certainly are facing pressures in our acute care facilities, and we're doing our very best to provide high quality care for our patients. We're seeing some increase in COVID admissions as well, which is creating some additional pressure.
The Health Ministry also says Ministers Paul Merriman and Everett Hindley have been visiting health facilities throughout the province this summer to speak with administrators and frontline providers. But Zambury says there have been no consultation about potential solutions.
You haven't even spoken to the people who do the work to ask them what exactly is it going to make it so that we can keep our rural and remote areas viable, so that we can keep facilities open.
Zambury says staff vacancy rates are climbing, which will affect the remote and rural centres the most. She is calling on the Premier and the government to bring in nurses for a conversation about solutions before things get worse. Pratush Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Moderna is suing Pfizer and BioNTech for patent infringement in development of its COVID-19 vaccine. In a statement released today, Moderna alleges Pfizer-BioNTech copied its mRNA technology developed years before the pandemic. The company says it is seeking damages in both the U.S. and Germany, but it won't seek damages on sales to 92 low- and middle-income countries covered by COVAX. That's the World Health Organization's program for global vaccine equity. Pfizer says it will, quote, vigorously defend against the allegations. Moderna's vaccine has brought in more than $10 billion in revenue this year. Pfizer's about $22 billion. The city of Regina is done waiting for the co-op refinery to pay up. In May of 2020, the refinery was responsible for an unprecedented discharge of oil-contaminated wastewater into the city's sewer system. Now the city is suing for more than $4.6 million. The suit claims the refinery was chronically discharging wastewater contaminated with hydrocarbons in 2019 and 2020. Then came what it calls the catastrophic event, wastewater with oil and grease amounts 40 times higher than allowable limits flowed to the city's wastewater treatment plant. The contaminated water was diverted, but damage was done to the system. The city is suing for cost of cleanup and punitive damages. The claims have not yet been tested in court. In a statement, Co-op says it's still working with its insurance providers. Animal Protective Services is reminding people to report abuse after a Regina man was arrested for allegedly killing a cat. 29-year-old Matthew Drummond faces 9 charges, including for animal cruelty and several for breaching probation. Police say home surveillance video showed a cat being lured and taken from its yard in June. Spots, as the cat is identified as in court documents, was found dead the next day in the other end of the city. Eventually, it was determined the cat's injuries were not accidental. Drummond was charged and arrested Tuesday in connection. Animal Protective Services of Saskatchewan says this kind of violence can't be investigated unless it's reported.
If we aren't made aware of these situations, we can't investigate them. So as members of the public, make sure that if you see abuse or you feel like an animal is being abused, you contact Animal Protection Services, or in Regina, the Regina Humane Society, as well as either the RCMP or the Police Service of Jurisdiction, who are also animal protection officers and can do this work throughout the province.
Drummond is currently remanded. He's due back in court on Monday. Last year, Drummond was also convicted of striking 2 cats to death in March of 2020. He was given a 6-month sentence, which he served on weekends, along with a lifetime ban on having animals. The curtain is closing on a beloved Regina movie theater. Rainbow Cinema will screen its last film September 25th. Magic Lantern Theatres, which operates the Rainbow, says its lease in the Golden Mile Mall has expired. The theater, often described as retro, opened in 1998 and plays art house films and documentaries in addition to the big films of the moment. Magic Lantern President Tom Hutchinson says Rainbow had difficulty attracting patrons in recent years. He says that while at one time Rainbow Cinema was a very popular location for cheap entertainment, its appeal has faded. Hutchinson says COVID-19 also accelerated the theater's downfall. Well, a cool new rock climbing opportunity, that is, started in Regina this week for young people who have or are experiencing vision loss. 6 people participated yesterday in CNIB's new 5-week rock climbing program at the Regina Climbing Centre. It's open for children and young adults from 10 to 25 years old. Climbing instructor James Lewis says the program is about more than just ascending a wall.
They could be heading over a horizon line that could be like super scary to them, but if they've got self-perseverance and patience and the ability to think while they're climbing up a rock wall, that they have no idea what the next hold's going to be, if they can problem solve impromptu like that, that's going to give them a lot of life skills down the road.
I figured out that one was a little challenging because I didn't know, and then I was like, I could swing. So then my friend there, she said try and swing to that glue thing by the 2 emerald thingies, and yeah, I did it.
Lewis says the goal is to get participants to the point that they are climbing safely on their own. The group meets each Thursday night at 5:30, and it doesn't cost anything for participants because it's sponsored by Jumpstart. You do have to RSVP before you attend, though, so for more details, you can reach out to CNIB. Stay with us. We'll be back with more after the break.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac, making back to busy easy.
Meteorologist Christy Kleiman-Haga joins us now. And Christy, yesterday not a lot to talk about. Very hot, very calm. Today, a bit of a different scenario with those storms firing up in the afternoon heat.
Yeah, definitely a more active day on radar across much of Saskatchewan, especially that southern half, and in the north, some active weather as well in the way of heat. Now, we've been seeing that heat for all week. We do have some heat records that have been broken in northern Saskatchewan yesterday. Buffalo Narrows breaking records set in the 70s, and Key Lake also breaking records. Now, right now, temperatures are still pretty warm. Heat warning still in effect for northern Saskatchewan. The good news there is it does look like they will drop. It looks like we will see those heat warnings going away through the weekend, and then a little bit of a break to start next week, but it won't be a very long break. So something to keep in mind. Right through this afternoon, it was in the high 20s in much of southern Saskatchewan. But again, with those storms, it was a little bit cooler as those storms passed through, and a lot of humidity out there feeding them. So just primed for some active weather this afternoon. Winds a little gusty, especially in that southeastern corner of the province. Those winds should start to ease up through the weekend. But again, once you look at our satellite and radar map, that's where you can see all the action throughout southern and especially southwestern and west central Saskatchewan, seeing those lines of storms rolling through as we make our way through the rest of the evening, expecting those storms to continue, and then overnight starting to ease up. Things should start to clear out, and you should see a little bit of a break until we get back into some active weather tomorrow afternoon. We are starting a weekend of unsettled conditions, so it is something to keep in mind for your weekend planning. Here's a look at the areas that are most likely to see some more severe weather as we head through the rest of the evening. So keep in mind, if you are especially in that southwestern corner of the province, that's kind of the bullseye for the right conditions to get those storms firing up through the rest of the evening. As you make your way into tomorrow morning, clearing out, so you'll see some sunshine, and then another system making its way through for the end of the weekend. Now, this one bringing some showery conditions for Sunday, some steadier rain further north. In terms of amounts, it will likely be in that kind of 10 to 15 millimeter range for the south, depending on which storms roll through, which thunderstorms. Further north, though, that's where you're seeing higher accumulations. Areas like Stony Rapids, you could see up to 30 millimeters of rain. Steadier rain in towards the northwest. Now, as for our long-range forecast, we are going to see some patterns developing in our jet stream once again as you make your way into next week, watching that ridge over Western Canada rebuild, and that's going to help warm temperatures pull into Saskatchewan once again. So especially late week next week, expect those temperatures to jump back to the 30s. So it is going to be a very hot end to the month. As for Regina's 7-day forecast, 29 degrees tomorrow, looking at the risk of some thunderstorms once again. Again, spotty showers for your Sunday. Temperatures a little cooler to start next week, and then heating right back up again into the 30s by Wednesday. And into Saskatoon tomorrow, 29 degrees, a little windy through the weekend as you do see that system pass through. And again, showers, thunder showers possible through the weekend. Sunshine through next week, but again, those temperatures are really going to start to build as you make your way into, especially later next week, temperatures back into the 30s. So something to keep in mind, a little break from the heat to start off the week. But Ethan, wow, we're really ending the month on a hot note.
No kidding. Pretty good for the farmers, maybe looking to getting some harvest done in the first part of September. Thanks so much, Christy.
You're welcome.
Climbing trees for a lucrative prize. Coming up after the break, we'll take you to Wascana Park in Regina, where arborists are competing this weekend, and they're knocking on wood that they'll be the lucky winners. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hundreds of Afghan refugees are about to start new lives in Canada. The federal government chartered a special flight that brought them to Winnipeg this morning. Ottawa has made a commitment to resettle 40,000 Afghans in this country. So far, just over 17,000 have arrived. Karen Pauls reports.
I can't wait to hold my nephews in my arms.
Syed Najib Amin flew from Montreal to Winnipeg to meet his two young nephews. 1 year ago today, their parents were killed in Afghanistan as they tried to flee the Taliban.
Because it's the 26th of August, for our family was a very bad day, and now it turns out to be a very good day.
About 115 of the refugees will stay in Manitoba. The rest will be flown to other cities. The logistics immense.
We've been expecting this charter flight since July. It kept on being postponed, and it hasn't been easy at this particular moment of time, knowing that we have Ukrainian coming as well.
120 of the refugees are children, 38 from a progressive high school in Kabul, renowned for educating and empowering young women. They knew they'd be targeted by the Taliban.
I don't know how can I explain it. It's something like now I feel so safe. I'm here and I can go to school. And I think that's
Amidst all the relief, though, there is a lot of concern for people left behind, especially those who worked for the Canadian military. Listening to the Taliban's communications, warning of attacks, they and their families are being hunted down.
There are so many left, in almost 4,000 to 5,000 people in Islamabad and thousands and thousands in Afghanistan.
We're only identifying this man as Ali because he was one of the interpreters working for Canada.
Please, the process should be fast, and please save the lives of Afghans who are stuck in Islamabad and stuck in Afghanistan.
This charter is the 14th to Canada so far in 2022. This parliamentary secretary says each flight is good news.
I think if it was a matter of will, there would be 40,000 Afghan refugees here already. But as we mentioned, the reality is that in every step of the way, there's been obstacles that we are facing.
Can I go inside?
Finally, Amin's family comes through the doors. The reunion emotional.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
This may be the end of their dangerous journey, but for many, new challenges are about to begin in their new life. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, it is an active day across Saskatchewan. It looks like things will clear out tonight, but not for long. A pretty active weekend ahead. Here's a look at tonight's forecast across Regina. 17 degrees at midnight and cloudy conditions. Clearing out by tomorrow morning, but not for long. Expect those clouds to build in back in the afternoon. 18 degrees in the early morning hours, but then back towards the 30s by your afternoon. And in Saskatoon, temperatures cooling off a little bit tonight, but not all that much. 19 degrees at midnight. By tomorrow morning, you will see sunshine. Temperatures sitting at about in the higher teens through your early morning hours. Get 18 degrees at 8 a.m. Through the afternoon, though, the risk of some more thunderstorm activity and some showers for Sunday before we get back to the heat as you make your way through next week. So a little bit of everything in this forecast. Ethan?
Sounds good. Thank you, Christy. And before we leave you tonight, most of us remember climbing trees as kids, but some people have made a career out of tree climbing as arborists. This weekend, more than 30 arborists from the Prairie provinces will converge in Regina's Wascana Park, and they'll put their tree climbing and safety skills to the test. It's part of the annual Prairie Chapter Tree Climbing Championship.
Well, the ISA Prairie Chapter Tree Climbing Competition is part of an overall tree climbing competition with the International Society of Arboriculture. So chapters all over the world hold competitions in their chapter, and their winners advance to the international competition, which is held different places in the world. This year it's being held in Copenhagen. It's a competition, but arborists earn continuing education units for competing in it, and it is an amazing learning opportunity. So there's a lot of camaraderie, and they also learn during our gear check process. So what we want to do is make sure competitors who are coming to the competition are using the equipment and using it properly. But Regina was chosen geographically because we want to hold it in one of the provinces in the chapter. And we chose Wascana Park because it's beautiful and had some really nice trees.
Oh, hang on. Originally, what got me into it was being outdoors and having a physical job. We get to climb trees all day and get paid for it. That's a bit unique. Some of the basic skills would be, like I said, a great attitude and a willingness to have a physical job and learning a lot. The ascent event is a test of the competitor's skill to assemble the system that they want to use to climb up the rope into the tree. And it's a combination of speed, of how fast you can get to the top, but also your knowledge and use of your ascent system. We're looking forward to lots of attendance and putting on a show of the skill and abilities of our climbing arborists.
A brave career to have. And on top of a trip to Copenhagen, there are chainsaws and climbing gear up for grabs as well. That's it for us at 6. Glenn, Reed, and Christy will be back with more news tonight at 11. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching and have yourselves a great weekend.